How do you survive being kicked out at 13 and still lead grown men into battle in the NBA Finals? That's not just a hypothetical question. That's Jimmy Butler's life. Long before the bright lights of the league, before the triple-doubles and deep playoff runs. Jimmy was just a kid from Tomball, Texas, trying to survive the kind of heartbreak that would break most people. His father left when he was just an infant. No memories, no goodbyes. Just gone. But that wasn't the end of the abandonment. It was only the beginning. At the age of 13, Jimmy came home to his mother, his last remaining parent, and heard the words that would change his life forever. "I don't like the look of you. You gotta go." Just like that. She kicked him out. No warning, no explanation, no plan for where he would sleep that night or eat the next morning. At an age when most kids are worried about homework or basketball practice, Jimmy was trying to figure out where he was going to live. He became a nomad, couch to couch, friend to friend, week by week, house to house. He didn't have a stable home, but what he did have, what he never let go of, was the fire. See, Jimmy never turned bitter. He didn't blame the world. He didn't drown in self-pity. He just kept grinding, kept playing, kept showing up with a smile that, in hindsight, was hiding a storm. During his high school years at Tomball High, Jimmy wasn't the biggest guy. He wasn't the fastest. He wasn't even a standout, but he had something that no coach could teach and no scout could measure: grit. And that's when fate introduced him to Jordan Leslie. Jordan was a fellow student athlete at Tomball, a football player with a soft spot for this quiet, determined kid named Jimmy. They struck up a friendship one based on respect, competition, and shared struggle. Eventually, Jordan invited Jimmy to come stay at his house for a night, then 2, then a week, then quietly, without ceremony. Jimmy became a part of the Leslie family. Now, let's be clear. This wasn't some Hollywood story where the new family adopted him legally and changed his life overnight. No, Jimmy wasn't officially adopted. He didn't even have his own room. But what he did have was a roof, a hot meal, and a place to belong, if only for a little while. The Leslies didn't take Jimmy in because he was a basketball prodigy. He wasn't on anyone's radar. He didn't have a mixtape or a ranking or even a real shot at college ball. They took him in because he was a good kid. That's it. He respected the rules. He worked hard. He never complained. And Jimmy, in return, never forgot what they gave him. Not just shelter, but dignity. But even in that safe space, he carried a truth that would follow him forever. He was still the outsider, a guest, a survivor, someone who had to earn everything. And that mindset, that edge, it never left. It became the foundation of who he would be in every practice, in every gym, in every huddle from that point forward. Jimmy Butler played like someone who had nothing to fall back on because he didn't. He played like someone who had already been kicked out of the only home he ever knew and who swore never to be powerless again. He didn't talk about the pain. He didn't advertise his past, but it was always there under the surface, like jet fuel. And while others were sleeping in warm beds, he was remembering cold nights. While others were chasing fame, he was chasing peace. That 13-year-old who had nowhere to go, he never really left. He just grew stronger. And before Jimmy Butler ever stepped onto an NBA floor, he had already fought through something far harder than any defender could throw at him. He had survived being unwanted, and he turned that rejection into relentless drive. After high school, Jimmy Butler had no scholarship offers from big-time basketball programs, no stars next to his name on recruiting websites, no articles, no hype, just a few stat lines in local papers, and a quiet belief that he was built for more. But belief alone doesn't pay tuition or put you on a roster. So instead of walking into a D1 powerhouse, Jimmy took a path that most hoop dreams never survive. Junior college, he enrolled at Tyler Junior College in East Texas. Now, this wasn't a nationally ranked program or a pipeline to the pros. It was gritty, it was forgotten, and it was exactly where Jimmy Butler needed to be. In that first season, he averaged just under 16 points and nearly 8 rebounds per game, solid numbers. But more importantly, he outworked everyone in the gym. He wasn't just playing, he was building a reputation. Word started to spread not because of flashy dunks or viral clips, but because coaches around the region were saying the same thing. This Butler kid, he's a dog, a grinder. One of those coaches was Buzz Williams. The head coach at Marquette University in Milwaukee, he saw something deeper in Jimmy, not just skill, but something harder to find, on edge. Buzz took a chance. He offered Jimmy a scholarship to join Marquette. No promises, no guaranteed minutes. Just an opportunity. Jimmy took it, packed his bags, and flew to a city he'd never been to before. He didn't know anyone. The winters were brutal. The culture shock was real. But he didn't flinch. Because for Jimmy Butler, discomfort wasn't new. It was home. When he arrived at Marquette, he was behind future NBA players like Wesley Matthews and Lazar Hayward. Jimmy didn't care. He embraced the grind. He came early, stayed late, watched film, asked questions. And when the games came, he didn't ask for the spotlight. He took the toughest defensive assignment and went to work. He wasn't the team's top scorer. He wasn't the star. But he was the backbone. By his junior year, Jimmy was averaging close to 15 points, over 6 rebounds, and 2 assists a game, more than the numbers. Though, he had become the player his teammates trusted when the game got ugly, when it was time to lock in and do the dirty work. Buzz Williams once said, "Jimmy doesn't just play hard, he plays mad, like he's carrying something on his back." And he was carrying the couch-hopping nights. The rejection letters, the stares from scouts who saw nothing special, the voice in his head that reminded him he was never supposed to make it this far. Jimmy wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing survival, and he was winning. Off the court, he kept it simple. He didn't party, didn't chase headlines, didn't act like he'd made it. Because to Jimmy, he hadn't. He was still climbing, still chasing, still working. And while others were looking for shortcuts or complaining about playing time, Jimmy Butler was studying the game like a science. He learned angles, footwork, timing. He became a master of the small things that most players overlook, because he knew that details win games and grit builds careers. By the time he left Marquette in 2011, Jimmy had carved out a name for himself, not as a phenom, not as a household name, but as a worker, as a guy who would show up, shut up, and lock down your best player, then go get a bucket when it mattered. He didn't get invited to the green room on draft night. He didn't wear a custom suit. He waited patiently, quietly, as 29 names were called before him. And when the Chicago Bulls selected him with the 30th overall pick, the world didn't stop. But Jimmy Butler did what he always did. He started at the bottom and went to work. The 30th pick in the NBA draft rarely makes headlines. It's the end of the first round, the part of the night when the cameras fade and most fans tune out. The lottery stars are long gone. The guaranteed contracts get smaller. The expectations are minimal. But for Jimmy Butler, being selected 30th overall by the Chicago Bulls in the year 2011 wasn't a disappointment, it was validation. Proof that the pain, the grind, and the sacrifice had led somewhere. Still, being drafted doesn't mean you've arrived, especially not in Chicago. The Bulls were contenders. They had the reigning MVP in Derrick Rose, a deep roster, and a city hungry for a championship. Jimmy Butler, he was just a rookie with no spotlight, no hype, and no real minutes. That first season, Jimmy barely played. He averaged just over 2 points a game. On most nights, he was parked at the end of the bench, quiet, observant, studying everything. But if you thought he was discouraged, you didn't know Jimmy. He treated every practice like a playoff game, every defensive drill like a war, and every garbage time minute like it was the NBA Finals. Slowly, coaches took notice. The man who believed in him most, Tom Thibodeau, a hard-nosed, defense-first coach who saw in Jimmy a kindred spirit, someone who didn't want to be coddled, who craved structure and challenge. Thibs unleashed Jimmy in year 2, no longer a project. Jimmy became a trusted perimeter defender, guarding the league's best night after night. LeBron, Kobe, Durant. Jimmy didn't just hold his own, he welcomed the smoke. Then came the breakout. In the year 2015, Jimmy Butler was named the NBA's most improved player. He went from backup to all-star, from overlooked to undeniable. That season, he averaged over 20 points per game, locked down elite scorers, and became the emotional engine of the Bulls. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't corporate polished. He wasn't trying to be liked. He was raw. He was real. He was relentless. But that edge, the very thing that made him great, started to clash with the new NBA culture of comfort and player empowerment. Jimmy didn't tolerate laziness. He didn't do easy days. He didn't like seeing teammates coast on talent while he was outworking everyone in the building. That friction came to a head in Minnesota, where Jimmy was traded after the Bulls reset their roster. The Timberwolves had young talent, Karl Anthony Towns, Andrew Wiggins, 2 former #1 picks. On paper, it should have worked. But Jimmy didn't want potential, he wanted dogs. And in a now legendary practice, Butler showed the world who he really was. He stormed into the gym late, grabbed the third stringers, and proceeded to dominate the starters in scrimmage while trash-talking the entire front office in the process. "I'm better than you," he barked. Even with these guys, that wasn't ego, that was truth. The message, talent without heart is empty. And Jimmy Butler was all heart. The media spun it as drama. The fans were divided, but the message landed. Jimmy wasn't built for softness. He wasn't here to babysit. He was here to win. Philly was next. Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, another super team in the making. But once again, Jimmy clashed with culture. He respected Embiid. But since Simmons lacked that extra gear, the mental fire, after one season and a heartbreaking playoff loss on Kawhi Leonard's miracle shot, Jimmy packed his bags. Most thought he was fading. His next move raised eyebrows. Miami, a franchise known for heat, sweat, and culture. A franchise that didn't hand you anything, you earned it. In other words, a perfect match. And as soon as Jimmy arrived, the league started whispering, uh-oh, this might work. Some guys show up in October. Some guys shine in January. Jimmy Butler shows up when the world is on fire. The moment he landed in Miami, the tone shifted. No more clashing egos. No more soft culture. Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra handed him the keys and said, "Let's see how far your fire can take us." And it didn't take long to find out. In the year 2020, the world was reeling from a global pandemic. The NBA was shut down, then rebooted inside the bubble, a strange, soulless campus in Orlando, where fans were gone and pressure was magnified. Most teams cracked under that isolation. Not Jimmy Butler. He turned the bubble into a proving ground. With no all-stars by his side, Jimmy led the Heat past Giannis and the Bucks, past Tatum and the Celtics, all the way to the NBA Finals against LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers. On paper, it wasn't even a fight. The Lakers had 2 megastars: size, experience, and momentum. Miami was down 2-1. Dragic was out. Bam was hurt. But then came Game 5. Jimmy dropped 40 points, 11 rebounds, and 13 assists, a triple-double. So gritty, so gutsy that he nearly collapsed. Walking off the floor, that image, Jimmy hunched over the scorer's table, gasping for air, drenched in sweat. It said everything. He didn't want to be famous. He wanted to leave pieces of himself on the floor. Even in defeat, that finals performance became legend. He didn't win the ring, but he won something else: respect. Fast forward to the year 2023. Miami barely scraped into the playoffs as the 8th seed. Nobody gave them a chance. The Bucks were loaded. The Celtics were deeper. The Knicks were hungry. Jimmy, he was locked in. In Game 4 against Milwaukee, he torched them for 56 points, one of the greatest playoff performances in NBA history. Then in Game 5, he tied the game on an impossible falling down alley-oop, sending the series to overtime and sending the Bucks home. He did the same to the Knicks, then the Celtics. Each time, the headlines were the same: Playoff Jimmy strikes again. Each time, analysts tried to explain it. Was it adrenaline? Was it strategy? No, it was Warrior DNA. By the time Miami reached the finals again, this time against Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets, Jimmy was banged up. He didn't put up crazy numbers, but he fought, he led, he never disappeared. Because alpha dogs don't hide when it gets ugly. They bite down, they take the hits, and they keep swinging. Jimmy Butler may not have a ring, but he has something rarer. He has the respect of every real hooper who's ever battled under bright lights and heavy pressure. He's the guy you want in the trenches, and in the NBA, that means everything